It's all Greek to me. Chapter 1. Nice doggy, nice doggy, nice doggy, said Sam. The monster barked 3 times once, with each of its 3 giant heads. A 3-headed dog? Fred pulled down his Yankees cap with a giant paper eye pinned on it. You've got to be kidding. The 3 heads snarled, showed fangs, and drooled and drooled and drooled. They didn't look like they were kidding. Down, boy, down, boy, down, boy, said Sam to the dog. Do something, said Sam to me. Fred, Sam, and I backed against a cold rock. We checked what weapons we had to fight this beast. Sam held a leer. Fred gripped his aluminum foil-covered thunderbolt, and I was armed with 1 golden spray-painted plastic apple. That and our bedsheet togas were all we had. Screams and groans echoed in the dim mist all around us. I looked for some way around the growling mad demon dog. He was standing guard over the one and only path out. How the heck did this happen? Said Fred. 1 minute we're about to go on stage for our school play, the next minute we're in hell. I believe it's called Hades' Cyclops head, said Sam, since I'm guessing that triple-headed drooler is Cerberus, guard dog of the ancient Greek underworld. But that's not real, said Fred. That's just mythology stuff in the play. And things like this only happen when we mess with the book. And Joe swore he locked that thing up. And Cerberus barked madly. And Joe? Said Sam. Well, I said. Joe? Said Fred. I sort of. Joe? Said Sam and Fred. Okay, I stuck the book in my backpack because Uncle Joe was coming to the show tonight, and I was going to give it back to him. But when Fred hit the book and the script with a thunderbolt, it must have set something off because that's when the green mist started. I blurted out in one breath. Sam and Fred looked at me like they were going to kill me. Cerberus, 3-headed dog of Greek mythology, looked at us like he was definitely going to kill us and enjoyed eating us. I wouldn't say you're a perfect idiot, said Sam. Nobody's perfect. The beast was so close we could see its 6 bloodshot eyes. Well, do one of those magic tricks you're always talking about and getting us out of here, said Fred. I racked my brain for any good magic tricks for dogs. Sit, I yelled. Stay, roll over, play dead. Cerberus growled and stepped closer. Joe, said Sam nervously. I don't think this is working. This never fails, I said. I picked up a small rock and threw it into the gloomy mist. Fetch! Not one of the 3 slobbering heads even turned to look. One head locked its red eyes on Sam. One head stared at Fred. One head zeroed in on me. The thing was so close we could see each thick black hair raised on its back and smell each blast of its roadkill breath. The last thing I remember thinking was, what a way to go. Eaten by a nasty-smelling monster that isn't even real. I can just hear one of you smart guys out there saying, how can you travel into Greek mythology? I thought the book could only travel through time. Honestly, I have no idea how we ended up facing the 3-headed dog of the underworld from Greek mythology. Well, I have some idea, but it wasn't really my fault. Okay, it was kinda my fault. but I was only trying to get things back to normal by putting the book back in Uncle Joe's hands. See, my life has been just too strange for words since my Uncle Joe gave me this book for my birthday. I'm sure you've gotten books for your birthday before, but this book is like no other book before. Or since it's a small book, a dark blue book with odd silver writing and symbols on it. It's a time warping book. And yes, I'll admit it, I have no idea how the book works or how to control it, but I do know it's sent Fred, Sam, and me back to the Stone Age for word to the future and even into other books. One thing that always stays the same is the green time-traveling mist that comes out of the book. The other thing is that once we got somewhere, the only way we can get back is to find the book in that new time or place. Get it? Got it? Good. Like I said, it wasn't my fault, but here's what I think happened. Our whole grade was backstage in the school auditorium, 5 minutes before the first performance of our play, The Myth of Power. It was a play about gods and goddesses, immortals and monsters and all the Greek mythology stuff we were studying in school. We had made some great sets of Mount Olympus, the mountain of all the gods live on top of, and the underworld, Hades. The music teacher was the director, so most of the play was about music, is the answers for everything. But we helped write a lot of the scenes, so all the gods and goddesses sounded like a bunch of wise guys. We also got to make some excellent thunderbolts to throw around, and wrote in a lot of fight scenes for the monsters. Anyway, that's why we were all standing around at school dressed up in bedsheets, togas. Fred was a one-eyed cyclops with an eye pinned on his Yankees hat. Sam was Orpheus, wandering around playing his lyre. I was Paris, the good-looking guy who is to decide which goddess is the fairest and give her the golden apple. That's a good myth. While we waited, Sam was rereading his book of snappy insults for the millionth time. We had been using all the good ones for the past month and even managed to get a good few in a play. Fred was pacing, trying to remember all 2 of his lines, and I think that's when it happened. "Help me out, Joe," said Fred. David says, "Hey, you guys, look." Then do I say, "We made those thunderbolts," or does Charlie say his line first? "Cyclops Fred," said Sam. "If you had to live by your wits, you would starve." Fred picked up an aluminum foil covered thunderbolt and bopped Sam on the head with it. I took my script out of my backpack. "Here it is," David says. "Hey, you guys, look," Charlie says. "Our thunderbolts." Then your line is, "We made those thunderbolts." I stuffed the script back into my backpack. "Sometimes is preying on your mind, Fred," said Sam. "But don't worry, it will die of starvation." Fred swung his thunderbolt again. Sam ducked. Fred missed. The thunderbolt hit my backpack. Something glowed weirdly for a second inside my backpack. Then my backpack started leaking green mist. I saw the house lights go black. I heard the piano playing the beginning of the first musical number. Our Greek myth play was starting, and Fred, Sam, and I were swirling off in a green mist. Time, tornado, farther and stranger than we had ever gone before. Sybaris crouched, ready to spring. Fred held up his aluminum foil thunderbolt. Sam tried to hide behind his lyre. "That's it," I yelled. "No kidding, this is it." said Sam. I just never thought I'd die in a bedsheet toga. No, you can save us, I said. Just like in the play, remember? Orpheus put Sybaris to sleep with music from his lyre. There's just one small difference, said Sam. In the play, I'm putting to sleep Ben, with 2 extra stuffed dog heads coming out of his sweatshirt. Here, I'm putting to sleep alive, mad, drooling, growling monster. Fred looked desperate. Well, this aluminum foil thunderbolt isn't going to do much for us. Why don't you give it a try? What have we got to lose? Sam cradled his Larry and nervously plucked a few strings. Sybaris froze, then cocked one head to listen. Sam plucked the beginning of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Sybaris sat down. Now all 3 heads were beginning to listen. I think it's working, I whispered. Sam finished Twinkle, Twinkle, and I started again. 1 head growled. Sam kept playing. 2 heads growled. He doesn't want to hear that song again, said Fred. It's the only song I know, whispered Sam frantically. He began another round of Twinkle, Twinkle. All 3 heads growled. Wait a minute. I've got the real answer, said Fred, digging into a pocket under his Cyclops costume. Sam started Twinkle, Twinkle for a 4th time. Sybaris howled, opened his jaws, and jumped forward to snap Sam in one mad gulp. Sam fell back. Fred tossed the thing from his pocket. The middle head chopped it in half and stopped in midair. Half a piece of chocolate cake fell from the middle head's mouth. The left head sniffed it. The right head bit it. Then all 3 heads were snapping at each other, fighting for the last chunk of cake. My last ding-dong, said Fred. Now let's make a break for it. No one had to tell us twice. We ran up the path past Sybaris, who was busy snarling, fighting, and biting himself. We ran past a guy rolling a huge rock up a hill. We ran past another guy reaching for fruit and water that kept moving away. We ran past spooky shadows and sights that we didn't want to see, until we finally burst above ground into the sweat green grass and beautiful hot sunshine. Yikes, huffled Sam. I take back every bad thing I ever said about you, Fred. That ding-dong was a stroke of pure genius. We lay back on the grass and soaked up the sun, trying to catch our breaths and shake off the creepy cold and gloom of the underworld. So once again, let me guess, said Sam, squinting through his glasses up at the clouds. We've lost the book and we'll never get home unless we find it. Well, yeah, I said. I've seen better heads on cabbage, said Insult Master Sam. And as usual, we have no idea where it is, said Fred. Well, yeah, I said, but now we know it's not down in Hades, and since I think the book has somehow sent us into our play and the Greek myths all mixed together, the only other place it can be is Mount Olympus. Great, said Fred. And with our luck, I'll bet the god who has it is probably the biggest, meanest, and strongest of the bunch. Zeus, said Sam, squinting into the clouds. Yep, king of the gods on Mount Olympus, I said. Zeus, said Sam. So how do we get there, said Fred. Zeus, said Sam, lifting his arm. Okay. We know the guy's name already, said Fred. How do we find him? Zeus! 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 Croaked Sam, pointing to the clouds. The shadow of a giant eagle suddenly covered us from above, with a swoosh of feathers and a burst of light. The monster bird changed into a huge white-bearded god, standing right in front of us. He pointed one finger threatening at us. "You!" he thundered. "Zeus?" we said.